I went from asking all the questions to having to have all the answers. And I very quickly learned that when you're camping, you could pretty much answer every question with one of four things. Put on a hat, drink more water, look at your map, and then the final one was, what do you think? Right? And what do you think worked really well for me? It still does, to be honest. Right? What do you think? And then people start to think, and then we begin to think together.
Hello, this is Marshall Goldsmith. So happy to be here. I am with two wonderful people who've written a fantastic book. First, I have Peter Bregman. Peter is the host of the best #1 top leadership podcast in the world, 1.5 million views. Fantastic podcast, also ranked Thinkers 50, one of the 50 top coaches in the world, and #1 leadership coach in the world. He's author of 5 books, including a book about Leading with Emotional Courage, which is a fantastic book. And we're here to talk about today the new book. And he is with Howie Jacobson. Howie, coaching for 20 years. He has written many books himself. He's a great writer. He is a thinker. And Howie is specializing in high-tech people. Howie, describe some of the typical people you might coach in the high-tech world.
So it's either leaders who are trying to scale their companies, who might have gone from just their own vision to now having to put together a team and grow it. So to go from, doers to leaders, and also sort of high potential people, anybody who's been a doer and now has to become a leader. It's sort of, the what got you here won't get you there crowd. So people who have to expand their capacity for communication, for leadership, and for vision.
I love the title of your book. Years ago, I had an experience that changed my life. I was working with the Northrop, what at the time was called the Northrop Companies before the merger with Grumman. I was working with the Northrop Corporation. They were down the drain. I mean, this company they were hitting bottom. You couldn't give the damn company away. Kent Cresta came in to be the CEO. Kent is a wonderful guy, a great leader. He did a spectacular job of turning around the company. The previous leader had a minor problem being a convicted felon for something that he did, and the company had huge issues. Kent came in, totally changed that company. I did training programs for their top 2,000 people. Kent asked me a very deep question, changed my life. The question was, does anybody ever really change? And I said, Kent, I have a degree in math. I think the answer is yes, but you know what? I don't have anything to prove it. So then I started doing research on people changing behavior, the importance of follow-up, and realized, people can change. I said, can't people change? Definitely. Will people change? Maybe. Can they change? Definitely. Will they change? Maybe. And that conversation kind of changed my life. Now, Peter, this is important. Why do you think changing people's behavior is the most important leadership skill? Why?
Ultimately, that is what leadership is about. And I mean, I sort of think of the example of that you talk about a lot with Alan Mulally, right? Alan Mulally turned around Ford from losing billions to making billions. And he did it with the same leadership team that was losing billions beforehand, right? At minus one person, he may have lost one person. And so a leader's job is to align people behind a larger vision, to harness the collective energy of everybody who is working there towards a common mission and a common goal. That's change. That's driving people. That is the ultimate job of any leader.
We've got people online from France, Brazil, India, all around the world listening. So hello, all you wonderful people listening. Yes, here we have someone from Brazil. We have people from France. Hello, everybody. We're so happy. South Africa, a really great global, Nigeria. Howie, why is it so hard to change? Everybody knows the theory. Why is it hard to do?
Yeah, it's hard for us to change, when we're in environments that are, not conducive to change, when we feel defensive, when we have, all sorts of habits and triggers in our environment that keep us doing the same things. But we find that people actually a lot of the time aren't resistant to changing themselves. People can change themselves all the time. They'll get a new job. Peter just got his first puppy. the problem is in an organizational context, when we try to change other people and we do it in a way that feels like it's limiting their autonomy, they can become resistant. So the very things we're trying to get them to do, we can actually get blowback and ensconce their resistance as opposed to their willingness to change.
Here's a principle too, Marshall. This is a principle that it underlies the book, which is people don't resist change. They resist being changed. That we all make changes all the time effortlessly because we choose to. But you want to change me? Forget it. I'm going to push back and I'm going to resist. And so if we want to help people change, we have to shift ownership from us to them. We have to shift capability from us to them. They need to have the emotional courage to want to, feel the hard things about change, but it's worth it. I think about, executives that I know who struggle with change, and it's because they're feeling the pressure from other people to change. And when you sort of sit back and go, okay, this is your call. Like, you want to do this, you don't want to do this. It's not, it's not for me. Like, you don't want to do this, then we're fine. The point at which they are willing to take the ownership, they will make anything happen.
Peter, you've got a great point. In my job as a coach for years, I didn't get paid if my clients didn't get better, and better wasn't judged by me or them, it's judged by everyone around them. And, as you mentioned, Alan Mulally, the client I coach, I spent the least amount of time with, he improved the most. The client I spent the most amount of time with didn't improve at all. And so I made a chart, time spent with Marshall Goldsmith on one dimension and improvement on the other dimension. There seemed to be a negative correlation between spending time with me and getting better. So I talked to my friend Alan, who's probably the best CEO in the world in the last 30 years. I said, Alan, the way this chart looks, had I never met you, you'd be even better. What should I learn about coaching from you? And Peter, he taught me 2 points, which are totally consistent with everything you and Howie are saying. He said, point number one, your biggest challenge as a coach is customer selection. You pick the right customer, this process always works. You pick the wrong customer, this process never works. Right. And he said, don't make coaching, and Howie, this goes back to your point, don't make coaching about yourself and your own ego and how smart you think you are. Make it about them, those great people that you work with and how proud you are of them. Then he said, as CEO of Ford, my job wasn't that different. I don't design the cars and sell the cars. I got to have great people. So, Peter, why do leaders get this wrong?
They get it wrong because they get frustrated and they allow their frustration to lead the day. And that ultimately, what you just said, which is and actually Howie said this earlier when he was talking about the kinds of people he helps. And it is a what got you here won't get you there. That a lot of times CEO have too much competence in the areas that they should be leaving to. And that's also in relationship to change. And there's something else I want to say around this, which is a culture in organizations that I find, and I'm curious to get your perspective about this, Marshall, but I find there is a way in which giving people feedback has replaced helping them to get better, right? Like if I'm just radically honest with you and I tell you what's wrong with your behavior and what you need to change, I have now done my job in helping you to perform more effectively. And the reality is, when you just give people feedback in probably somewhat of a messy way that's cathartic for you, and you've told them the truth and now they have to deal with it, that actually decreases their performance. And what leaders have to do is, rather than think about, am I telling this person the truth? They have to think about, how do I help this person up their game? That's the challenge. The challenge is to say, how do I help the people around me perform more effectively, get better? And maybe feedback plays a role, but it is not just about feedback. It is actually about having a system, a process, a bunch of steps that can help you help them get better. And just telling them what the truth is or telling them what you're feeling often has a blowback effect.
Stephen Robbins has an interesting point on the comments. He said the whole coaching industry has largely been created because managers don't see it as part of their jobs anymore.
Right.
So that's a really fascinating comment from Steve. Good to hear from you, Steve. And then, another thing about this is, you and I have worked together, and we had opportunity to work with some wonderful people, a person Juan, some other people. And, I like working together with other coaches as well. I mean, why not? Why not? This isn't this isn't a kind of win-lose contest here. And to me, I love working with you. And now I'm starting to do more work with other coaches. I don't feel some possession here that it's not about me anyway. It's about them. How do you feel about coaches working together? Howie, what do you think?
I think it's great because one of the things that I've learned from hanging out with coaches, especially with, the 100 coaches community that you created, is coaches tend to be relentlessly positive. And one of the reasons that leaders get this wrong in organizations is that they're doing what's called the fundamental attribution error, which is they look at someone who's underperforming or self-sabotaging or performing, behaving badly in some way. And they think, well, if I were to do that, why would I do that? And they can only come up with bad reasons, like the person's lazy, they're incorrigible, they're confrontational. When I'm working with other coaches, I'm always reminded to look at the positive, to look at how could this person actually be trying to help? What is the positive intention behind the behaviors that they're engaged in? And when I can approach in that way, when I can see them as an ally rather than as a problem to solve or someone to criticize and to improve performance, then I can approach them and then we can have a conversation as equals in which they're amenable to my feedback, to my guidance. So I think working with other coaches really can help us remember to stay positive and to look for the good in others.
And working with other people, they can coach us, so they can help us help others. So Peter, that's one reason I love working with you is we can then help each other. Say, what could I have done better? I love that.
I love it. Like, I actually think coaching is a very lonely profession to a certain degree. Like, we have amazing relationships with our clients. But until I got in a room with you, until you and I sat down together with a client and started coaching him together, like the only time I've ever watched other people coach was in coach trainings that I led, right? That I was sort of watching people coach. And so it's actually very, very interesting. Like, I learned a tremendous amount from you, Marshall. One of the ways in which you've impacted my coaching is you have this incredible gift and talent of saying something, doing the opposite of what I'm doing right now, which is saying something in the simplest, clearest way possible. CEO, that's good. Owner, better. It's better to be an owner than it is to be a CEO. Right? You have this way of looking at reality and reducing it to its simplest truth and then sharing that truth. And that's impacted the way I coach. And so for me, that's been amazing. And actually, I want to go back to Stever's comment also, which I think, hi, Stever, and I think is really critical, which is, and it's why we wrote this book. The book, You Can't Change Other People, is very much about taking coaching methodology, taking what we do as coaches and simplifying it and making it accessible in a sort of guidebook way to managers. Because the idea is it's great. I'm a coach. I love when people farm out, the most senior level coaching, but managers need to be able to coach their people. It's not just about, giving them feedback, but it's about coaching them to be better. And so we wanted to share a process that managers can use, that anybody can use, that I use with my kids in order to help them, get better at the things that they want to get better at.
We've already helped someone in the call. Karen had some validation. She said, just like I was talking about, that she realized that, coaching is not about her spending time and about how brilliant she is, that it's really that she's had the same experience as us, that just really works with people. Another thing, Peter, you said is, I think we confuse two terms, honesty and disclosure. And to me, it's very important to distinguish these two terms. One comment you made, which I really like, is you don't help anybody by sitting there blasting them and talking about what idiots they are. And, how could you have done this stupid thing? Well, maybe that's how you feel. Who cares that's how you feel? The world is not a better place because you say that. I was in encounter groups 8 hours a day, 2 days a week at UCLA for 6 months. I'm very familiar with the concept of disclosure. And disclosure is great in some settings. In other settings, disclosure can be disastrous. You sit around a bunch of doctors and nurses and say, let's really share how we feel about each other. Well, a lot of times they hate each other. Well, it's not so bad. They do their jobs together. They don't love each other, but they still get a good job done. All of a sudden, they start talking about how they hate each other. Things just start spiraling down, and you can't take it back. Peter Drucker taught me a great lesson, which I've repeated, and you've heard me say it 100 times. Our mission in life is to make a positive difference, not to prove we're smart, not to prove we're right. And before we talk, if we just breathe and say, and back to Howie's point, am I making a positive difference with this comment?
Right.
Or am I just proving I'm smart?
Yeah, and I think a way of shifting is to say, okay, I feel these things. I might feel these things about this person, but it's not about me. It's about them. What is the outcome we want them to get? How do we want to help them? What are they going for? And can I do or say something that will positively impact them in the future? Can I help them get better? It's about them, not about us.
You know, that's a great point. One of my old teachers is the late Roosevelt Thomas. And Roosevelt Thomas was a world authority in the concept of diversity years ago. And Roosevelt taught me the difference between a preference and a requirement. And a preference is, you know, I like what you're doing. And a requirement is it has something to do with this job. And he brought up the example of Phil Jackson, who was a basketball coach, of Dennis Rodman. You know, a lot of people didn't like Dennis Rodman because he had different color hair, green, yellow, whatever. He did a few crazy things. But, you know, Phil Jackson's attitude is leading the damn league in rebounding. God bless Dennis Rodman. I'm not here for having a fashion show. Now, did Phil Jackson waste any time talking about his preference for Dennis Rodman's hair? No. You know, he said, I don't care. It doesn't matter to me. Have any kind of hair you want to have. I don't care. Well, and who cares how people feel about Dennis Rodman's hair? They won all these championships, right? Because the guy's a great rebounder. So I think that's the difference between honesty and disclosure, which Roosevelt taught me about. He said, look, really focus on, is this comment going to make a difference? Is it positive? Is it useful? And, you know, Peter and Howie, one other person we work with is Gary Ridge. And, you know, Gary Ridge says, my job, I'm here to help people make an A, not to grade their papers. And I love that attitude. How it goes back to what you said is, look, he said, give people the answers in advance. Tell them what's expected. You're here to make them A. Sitting there pointing out what idiots they are because they failed, right? That's not what it's about. Most education system, unfortunately, is let's grade the paper. Feedback, Peter, gets into let's grade the paper, not let's help them make an A. Howie, what are some other thoughts from you?
Well, you know, I spent 20 years as a teacher, so that really resonates with this. You know, and I saw when I entered the organizational world that a lot of the same things that we thought of, you know, like you have to work by yourself. Like if you work with other people, that's cheating. If you know the answers, if you ask for the answers in advance, you're a grade grubber. And this, you know, this idea that when we get to organizations, that there's a limited pool of goodness, and that we have to compete for it, still can be the default unless we actively change that mindset. And as coaches, I think, you know, when we go in and we look for like, how can we all do better? How can this team of people that we're, you know, if we're coaching 3 or 4 people on the team, we want to think of the team as our client or the entire organization as our client. I've learned a lot from Peter's Big Arrow methodology, which is really about alignment. So that, you know, my work with an individual client has to be in the context of what the entire organization is going for. And there has to be an assumption, therefore, on the part of my client that what's good for them is what's good for the organization and vice versa. And I think that takes very enlightened and noble leadership to give people that message.
You know, I got a comment, does a coach need to be a psychologist? And the answer to that to me is maybe. If you're doing coaching that's related to psychology, that might be very important. On the other hand, to me, I have a different definition of coach. To me, my friend David Allen is a great coach. He's not a psychologist. He's helping people get organized. Well, it depends how you define coach, but I would define him as a coach. He's a fantastic guy and helps people get organized. He's certainly not a psychologist. I mean, I have a Ph.D. in organizational behavior, but there's a million things I can't help people with, like communication skills. There are people, Paul Argenti works with us, much better than I am at training people in communication skills. And Peter, you have different skills than me. So that's another reason I like coaches working together is clients have different needs. And, you know, more and more, I'm just recruiting other people to help my clients. Also, I can't help them. I don't know what it's like to be a CEO. I've never been a CEO. Yet I can help my clients by having them meet other CEOs. So, Peter, what are some of your thoughts about this? That's one thing I love about our LPR process, that leaders get to meet other leaders.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I think that my answer to that question depends on whether you mean psychologist as in officially, Ph.D. psychologist, or if you mean conceptually, like coaches better understand the psychology of people. I do think it's important as coaches that we understand how people operate. That's the study that we're all in. We're all studying, how do people operate? What are when I say people don't resist change, they resist being changed. That's because I'm looking and watching and saying, how are people operating? When I say they need ownership in order to change, or they need emotional courage, where I'm asking that question. And I think that's, great coaches are constantly looking around at what's working and what's not working and making observations about the way people operate. And in that way, I think we're all psychologists. In the legal definition of the term psychologist, do I think all coaches need to be PhDs in psychology? Absolutely not.
Yeah, Karen has a very good point about this. She talks about the ICF guidelines of what coaching is, and definitely you don't necessarily have to be a psychologist to do this. Peter, one of our good friends is Goldsmith. She's the head of the ICF. ICF has totally changed on this. ICF used to have much more of a structured format of coaching is this. Coaching is not everything else. And Magda has really educated me that ICF has changed a lot. It's really changed a lot, much more open now to helping people with all kinds of different ways and different approaches, which, I think is just incredibly helpful.
Super positive.
Yeah,
Super positive.
Magda's just been a great influence. So I love working with her.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. One of the issues when I'm teaching classes or when I do something for ICF and someone watches me coach, right? If I do a demo and they say, well, Peter, you seem to be giving advice, and the things, coaches should never give advice. And my answer is I don't know, I don't think I would be very valuable to my clients if I didn't offer them my perspective on things. They're asking me, there's things that I know. I actually want to give them my perspective when I'll go back to the, one of my favorite things that you've said, Marshall, when you're in a conversation with someone, you go, oh, CEO, good, owner, better. You're giving advice. You're saying, look, understand the dynamic of your relationship with the other people, and here's how I see it. And I'm delighted to know, because I think at the highest levels of coaching, people are not just looking to us to ask good questions. They're looking at us to engage with them as thought partners, strategic thought partners in how yes, we should have good questions. Yes, the ownership needs to stay with the client, but we are strategic thought partners with our clients in terms of helping them to succeed and make positive change. And so, I'm delighted to know that ICF is opening up that definition. She's been great.
A very interesting question I learned back to our friend Alan Lawley. He said, before I speak, ask a question. Do I know more about this topic than other people? The answer is yes, talk. The answer is no, don't. Right. Well, somebody talking about how do these people get ranked number one, this and that. I got ranked number one coach in the world for years. Why? Nobody knows I'm a good coach. I've got some advice for your coaches out there. Have great clients. Why did I get ranked number one coach for years, Peter? Other than you, very few people ever saw me coach anybody. Why did I get ranked number one for coach for years? I got great clients who stand up publicly and say, hey, this guy helped me. You want to get right. You want to be number one coach. That's an easy equation. You work with great people, you win. That's what Alan Mulally taught me. To me, the key to coaching isn't the coach. This is the important point. The key to coaching is that person being coached. You work with great people. They're dedicated, hardworking. They want to get better. The coaching process is almost always going to work. You work with people who don't care. You're just wasting your time. Now, Howard, what advice do you have for all the leaders out there just listening to help them better in their efforts to be a better coach?
Yeah, so for the first thing we've been talking about as coaches is it's not about us. So, it's important for us to have practices that allow us to check our egos at the door a little bit. And that might be hard for leaders who, they're leaders. They've got they have strong egos, they have strong personalities, they have strong vision. But in the moment of the conversation, to really be focused on what's this outcome that I'm going for, and in terms of what is coaching. I read this word that I discovered that I'm a contextualist, which means I ask myself, is this going to work? So for leaders to be really, really clear about what's the outcome I'm going for here, look at the people that are around me and assume positive intent. If you can't assume positive intent of the people around you, and you honestly can't, then they shouldn't be there. That's not right. Like Marshall, you talk a lot about like what's a coachable issue and what's not a coachable issue. Like bad intent, bad will, dishonesty, immorality, those are not coachable issues. So begin by assuming that the people around you have positive intent. They may be stuck. They may not be seeing the effects of their particular behaviors, and approach them as an ally so that they don't feel shame. Because when we feel shame, if someone comes up and criticizes me and I feel that sinking feeling of shame, the first thing I want to do is deny that there's any sort of problem. And that's where the defensiveness comes from. If we can be open and positive with people and let them know that we have their and our and the organization's best interest at heart, that goes a long way to tenderizing people to be able to look at themselves, hear what's going on around them, and begin to make changes in that safe environment.
It's very interesting. I haven't thought about when coaching doesn't work. And I can only speak to behavioral coaching because I'm not an expert on all other types of coaching. And when it does work, one, Howie, point you just made I want to build on, don't coach integrity problems. Never coach an integrity issue. Fire integrity problems. You lie, you cheat, you steal, you're fired. You don't get a coach. You don't coach somebody on integrity. Fire somebody. And sooner is better than later. Fire them immediately. You lie, you cheat, you steal, you're fired. That's the way you deal with integrity problems. Not you give them a coach. What do you coach them? Quit stealing? It's ridiculous. Fire people that have integrity problems.
Steal better.
Yeah, fire them. Don't coach them. And then the next thing is, you can only coach issues where you have an area of expertise. So I get ridiculous requests for coaching. Ridiculous. A pharmaceutical company calls me up. We want you to coach Dr. X. I said, what's his problem? They said, he's not updated on recent medical technology. You know what I said? I'm not either. How am I supposed to coach some doctor who's not updated on medical technology? I don't know anything about medical technology. So to me, when does behavioral coaching work? One, the issue has to be behavioral. I'm not an expert on strategy. I can't give people strategic advice. It needs to be behavioral. Number one, it has to be behavioral. Number two, they have to want to do it. And then number three, it's behavioral. They want to do it, and the company's going to support them. Have you ever seen this happen, Peter, when the company says they want to coach someone, but they don't want to coach them? It's seek and destroy. They don't have the guts to fire them. So this fake coaching thing. Have you ever seen that happen?
Yeah, and you actually, I called you recently for some advice, and you gave me great advice. So I'm going to share the advice that you gave me with everybody here, which is, you said if the CEO or the board is saying, we're gonna, I'd like this person to be succeed. We're gonna wait and see. We're gonna give them coaching, and we're gonna see if they change, and see if they get better. And if they don't get better, we're gonna have to fire them. And if they do get better, then that's great. And the advice you gave me is that's a lose situation. They have already decided to fire the person. That what you want to hear someone in leadership say is, hey, I want this person to be successful, and I'm going to communicate that to the organization, and I'm going to give them the support that they need in order to be successful. So if it's a let's wait and see, they're probably going to end up getting fired. If it's I'm committed and we're going to help them to be successful, then they probably have a very, very good shot.
I love that. One person, Mike, has a great comment. He said, brutal honesty is typically 90% brutal and 10% honesty, right?
I think
I love that comment. Brutal honesty is mostly brutal and 10% focused on honesty. And again, it's going back to, why am I saying this? Back to Peter Drucker. Am I saying this to make a positive difference? Am I saying this to help the world get better? Am I saying this to help this person? Or am I saying it because I'm just venting? Just venting. And by the way, if venting would help, people say, well, isn't it good to vent? Yeah, right. Isn't it good to vent? Well, if expressing my anger is a good thing, war would cause peace. Yeah, isn't it good to have wars? I mean, we get to vent and have wars and talk about how bad the enemy is and jump up and down and hate them. That doesn't really help peace a whole lot. So you don't get peace by having war, right? You don't screaming at people. It doesn't help the situation, right? So you need to think, really, why am I doing this? Why am I doing this? Now, it's about our time is almost up. It's been so wonderful to talk to both of you, Howie and Peter. Howie, final comment from you for the group.
One of the things Peter and I discovered when we started using this process on ourselves is that it works much better when we use it with other people. And it really underscored to me the point that we need each other, that human beings need each other. The reason change can be hard is because we are trying to change in unsupportive environments. So to learn how to help each other, to be each other's allies in organizations, in families, in communities, I think that's kind of the medicine we need to move our culture and our civilization forward.
Howie, I love what you just said, because to me, I can just speak for myself. If I don't understand how it applies to me, I don't understand it at all. And, the one thing I never like is self-righteous coaches who pretend they're somehow better than their clients, which I think is nonsense. As you know, I have to have somebody call me up every day. Why, my name is Marshall Goldsmith. I'm too cowardly and undisciplined doing this stuff by myself. I need help. And you know what? It's okay. We all need help. And if I'm not trying to get better myself, who am I to preach to others about trying to get better? So Howie, I love your point. I don't think coaches have to be better than other people or superior. Quite the contrary. I think the best coach is a coach that's trying to get better himself or herself, not sit there and preach at everybody else about their problems. Even more important for CEOs. CEOs like, Peter, one of our great clients, Hubert Joly, who I just love, former CEO of Best Buy, did a spectacular job. He stands up in front of everybody. My name is Hubert Joly. I'm getting feedback. I have a coach. Here's what I'm trying to improve. Please help me get better. He expects everybody else to do the same thing, but he's not leading by preaching. He's leading by example. Peter, what are some final thoughts from you?
I think one of the most important things that we can ask when we're hoping to change people, or when we're hoping that people change, is what is the outcome I want? And how can I best be a tool in supporting getting to that outcome? And when we ask what is the outcome I want, and it's related to another person, we have to ask what is the outcome they want? Like, what are they going for? And how can I be supportive and helpful in them getting there? So it's a version of what Howie said, which is, how do we become allies instead of critics of the people around us? And what are some tools that we can use to help them become the kinds of people that they want to be, that makes the world a better place?
Oh, I love it. And, I'm very honored to be able to do this show. Why? Because in the same way, Peter, if I could help you and Howie even a little, you guys are helping a lot of people in the world. And indirectly, that makes me feel like I'm helping the world. So I just want to close by saying thank both of you, because you had meaning to my life. You had meaning to my life, because I'm so proud to know both of you. You're proud you're part of the 100 Coaches organization. And maybe, again, if I can help you a little bit, that's going to help other people a lot. And I hope everybody listening in, I want to thank all the people that are part of this seeing this, is thank you for tuning in. And look, my mission in life is pretty simple: help you have just a little better life, and maybe the people around you have a little bit better life. And so hopefully some of the things that we're doing maybe help you have a little bit better life, or the people around you have just a little bit better life. So both of Howie, Peter, thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Marshall. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
I went from asking all the questions to having to have all the answers. And I very quickly learned that when you're camping, you could pretty much answer every question with one of four things: put on a hat, drink more water, look at your map, and then the final one was, what do you think? Right? And what do you think worked really well for me? It still does, to be honest. Right? What do you think? And then people start to think, and then we begin to think together.